I'm Mark Hennick. This is So-Called Normal. Hey folks, welcome to So-Called Normal. I'm Mark Hennick. Today on the show we have Kevin Newman. Kevin is the former managing editor and host of CTV's W5. A long time prior to that, or not that long ago, I guess, but he used to be the anchor of global national news. He's had a long career, a long and credentialed career in journalism, even though, as you'll hear in the interview, he never went to journalism school, and I didn't know that. But that just goes to show you, right, that it can it takes all kinds to make the news and to report the news. And Kevin has a long career of doing that very well and of earning the respect of Canadians from coast to coast and people all over the world. His book that he wrote with his son Alex, All Out, has been on shelves for a while now, and it's a great read. I highly recommend you go out and pick that up. And his podcast, Attention Control, dealing with fake news and what truth is and how we consume truth, is out now. So, we talk about all these issues in the interview, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Kevin is fresh off of retirement, so this is what he does in his spare time now. He hosts a podcast in election season and sits down with people like me to chat about the truth. So here's my conversation with Kevin Newman on So-Called Normal. So who is Kevin Newman? Let's start there.
Isn't that a lifelong quest?
Yeah.
Right now, Kevin Newman is more relaxed than he was.
You're emanating a relaxed feel. So why?
Even though I just arrived here in ridiculous traffic, of course. I'm still searching that out. I thought I knew Kevin Newman at 30. I thought I knew me at 40, 50. I'm now 60.
And just recently retired.
Just recently retired from television. Now a fellow podcaster.
Yeah.
Oddly enough.
What's the name of the podcast?
It's called Attention Control.
Attention Control.
And it's going to run during the election campaign, looking at the misinformation campaigns that are flowing all over our smartphones and lives. But I have, every 10 years it seems, I sort of throw down what I'm doing, throw down the tools, and then try to reinvent myself and try to learn new things. I never imagined I would be doing this for so long, but I've done it at like a whole bunch of different places and different countries. And
you were working in the States for a while at
I was,
ABC, right?
Yeah. So at this point in my life, I am as curious as ever, as intensely curious. Yeah. I want to learn new things from people younger than myself. I want to do more mentorship. And I want to learn how to live life a little more softly. I've had a great career, but it's been very stressful, and it's been at the highest levels of my profession. And you reach a certain age, maybe 60 was it for me, where you begin to see the end of the runway and you say, so what else do I want to accomplish, not in my career, but in my life? And the only way I could do that was to step off the fast lane and slow things down.
Yeah, I've had a number of journalists on the show and I've talked to them in a variety of contexts. And I don't think everybody appreciates, people who are watching what you do, sometimes the trauma that's involved and how exhausting it is. That the great news story sometimes is tacked on at the end of the broadcast, sure, but the rest of the news, it can be draining.
That's really insightful. It is wallowing in the ugly of the world. Right. Because journalism, people always ask, why don't you talk about like happy things more often? Right. And I said, because if journalists talked about happy things, we'd be in real trouble, because that means the world is crap. Right. But the world is, I think, generally a good place, filled with good people who are well-intentioned. You
still think that after all these years?
After all these years.
Yeah.
But in my working life, you are always having to make a connection with trauma, with emergencies, with people who are going through it, with countries that are experiencing it, with political parties that are sometimes trying to induce it. So it is a big part of what your life is. And I've taken a few breaks to heal from that and just, ground myself and remind myself that, not everything is an emergency, not everything is in a crisis. And I've probably done that again now.
How quickly can you, like you say, you've been, not only did you achieve the highest levels of your profession, you've been at the highest level of your profession for years. You were anchoring global news for what, 10 years?
10 years.
Probably, before you even moved on to all this.
Yeah.
So, How quickly now can you sniff out the bullshit when you see that somebody's trying to, instigate a scandal of some kind or something isn't a real story? How quickly do you find that now?
Well, there are patterns to behavior that you begin to notice.
Right.
I think it's much more challenging now with the deluge of social media crap and manipulation and misinformation. You know what it is? I'm not sure it's so much a recognition of what's crap. It's a heightened ability to recognize what's real and what's authentic.
Right.
And so you can be in all sorts of conversations, and there's just things that you recognize on a human and a personal level that tells you, this person's speaking from a point of truth.
Yeah.
And I think, when I was younger, I made assumptions that most people operated from that way. And, as I've gotten older, I think most people still do. But the ones who are really worth listening to are the ones that send these, kind of subtle signals that they've thought things through. And what they're feeling is not an attempt to manipulate the media or manipulate me, but they really just want to tell their story because they need to.
Right. So you haven't become jaded after all these years?
No, I don't think so. I for my 60th birthday, I threw a little party, and one of the 5 things I think I've learned is that the world is essentially a good place filled with good people. And finding them so that you can build things together with them is the journey of life. That if you can, continue to sort of knock the bullshit artists to your side and just figure out, okay, you're somebody I want to do this with, whatever this is. If that makes sense.
Let's do a little bit of the bio stuff.
Sure.
How this is the progression of your life and career to get you to that point. Where did you start out? You were in Toronto, right?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Mississauga.
Yeah,
mostly, and went to university, and then got my first job at Global News in Toronto when I was 21.
So you've done this all your
life.
This
is journalism. Yeah, I mean, I did campus journalism at Western.
Right.
I started a radio station there, so I've only ever done journalism.
What drew you to it? Why?
It's the best backstage pass to life.
Right.
I mean, if you can, I remember when I was working at CHRW, which is Radio Western, I remember thinking, hey, Leonard Nimoy's coming to town. So I called up and I called the stage, and he was doing a one-man play, and I said, this is Kevin Newman from CHRW. I'd like to interview Leonard Nimoy, and they didn't laugh at me.
Right.
And I thought, oh, this is cool. If you work for like a media organization, you get to call anyone up and say, I want to talk to you, and they're more than likely to say yes. Yeah. And and throughout my career and throughout my life, that's been the case, that if you ask people, generally their answer is yes. So then I started working television at Global and worked my way up there. And I seem to have a pattern of changing things up every 4 to 7 years.
Right.
So
ambition, is that what it is?
Yeah, some of it's ambition. Some of it is I have a deep curiosity, and I just want to keep trying new things. Some anchors stay the same place for 45 years. That's never been me. So it was mostly curiosity driving me. I wanted to experience a new environment, new place in the country, new way of storytelling. I wanted to learn from other people. I didn't want to ever become stale.
So then when did the ABC News thing come up? That was in the 90s, right?
Yeah. And that was, how in a career you sort of most people, it's sort of cool for a little while, and then you go, oh, Jesus is ugly. So that was my ugly moment.
And that's what I want to explore. That's why I want to explore. Because, so what's going on there at that time in your life? You were with Global.
I was with CBC at the time.
CBC at the time.
Yeah, and they wanted to replace me with somebody else on a show called Midday, which is like a midday national show across the country.
Right.
They wanted to keep another anchor in their stable, and they offered him my job, and then said that they would talk to me about what else was next, and then I never heard from them. So I thought, oh, here I am. This is the glass ceiling that everyone talks about. Anyway, so and this sounds like a ridiculously spiritual story, but it's a fact, it's truth. They had asked me, because the new anchor didn't want to start for another 4 months, so I had to continue anchoring a show I knew I was fired from for many months.
Oh, wow.
And that was very, very stressful.
Sure.
You can imagine being told, we don't want you, but we need you to fill it so that the guy who's going to replace you is is ready to come.
So how did you manage that, coming into work every morning?
I had a family to feed. I had to.
Right.
And they kept saying they were going to talk to me about something else, and they never did.
Yeah.
So I sat on my front porch one morning going to work, and I just said, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but if this is it, show me a sign. I will go back to flipping burgers at McDonald's. I'll do whatever I need to do to support my family. And that very same morning, I went into work, and there was a voicemail from ABC saying, would you like to come down and talk to us? And I went down. Went through an incredibly rigorous interview process, met Peter Jennings, who was the god of news at the time, and got hired. And then went back to the CBC and said, I'm leaving for ABC. And they said, oh, wait, we want to talk to you about where you're staying. I said, sorry, man, I'm out the door.
Yeah, funny how that works.
Yeah. I'm out the door, buddy.
Yeah.
And then I went down there.
So what was the experience like in the States? Was it different then? I mean, it seems like the media landscapes have enmeshed so closely now that what does it even mean to be part of Canadian media? But
I actually disagree with that. I actually think that we have managed to hold on to the tenets of journalism a little bit better than they have in the States, where they're they're just chasing all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's almost no international coverage. It's all Trump all the time.
Right.
And there's other things happening in America other than what Trump said today.
Right. I mean, and in '94, it wasn't maybe it was a less politically turbulent time.
It certainly was. Yeah. No, it was. I mean, the countries were more similar then in the journalistic traditions.
Yeah.
And you go work for an American broadcaster at the time, and it's like, I mean, in Canadian broadcasting, you would always go, I'd really like to do this story. Here's how much it costs. Do you think we can do this? Oh, we can't do that. So then we won't pursue that. Down there, it was like, I really want to do this story. And they'd say, how much does it cost? And they'd say, well, I think I need to do this to do it. He said, great. Now it better be great. So there was no impediment. There was just lots more money.
Yeah.
And a higher degree of sort of academic brilliance too.
Right.
Just really smart people.
Yeah.
Really, really smart people.
So how long were you down there?
I was down there about 8 years, 8 or 9 years.
8 or 9 years, and then you come back again. That's that
There's
pattern.
That
coming
pattern.
back.
4 to 7 years, and then started up Global National in Vancouver, which was then Global didn't have a national newscast, so we created it, and that to me was the biggest creative opportunity in my life, was to try to stitch together what was then, they weren't even a real national network at that point.
Right.
And they had become that. They'd purchased it, but they one of the things they had to tell the regulators that they create a national newscast. So to create a new news entity from scratch in a company that wasn't accustomed to it was a big challenge, a big cultural challenge for them. But for me, it was a great creative challenge because I got to create it according to the instincts that we had, not to be like CTV, not to be like CBC, but to be something new and different. And it turned out to be
for me, I'm watching the evolution of global news in particular over the years. I think what made it always stand out for me was that it was obvious that they were trying to do something different, something that wasn't just in the mainstream, typical evening news broadcast.
Yeah. I mean, when I went there, I took a couple of marketing friends out, and I said, so tell me, what's the global news brand? And they said, well, a friendly place for a weak cup of coffee. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So they've got the friendly part down, but their journalism feels a little bit mushy. And they were trying to be sort of like the others, but didn't really have the resources. So we decided to create an espresso newscast. And we didn't have the resources that the other guys had, but we were going to be a little more pointed, a little more cocksure, a little more driven.
Does that mean having an agenda, or what is that? What makes it? What gives it drive?
It did have an agenda, and the agenda was to be aggressively populist. To really ask hard questions, to not follow someone else's agenda, but just do the, maybe it was narcissistic thing, but just decide what you find interesting and see if other people do. And it took off slowly, but 5 years in, we were the leading newscast in the country. We were bigger than in ratings Monday to Friday than CTV or CBC.
Wow. So then you cross the river and head over to CTV.
Yeah,
but
then this is where we get to sort of the trauma part of it. Is like that degree of driving for any startup. I mean, anybody who's done a startup knows it takes every part of you to do it. And I had founder syndrome as well, and it was personal to me. And about 10 years in, 9 years in, I thought this is not healthy for me. And
how did you know? What were your signs that it wasn't healthy?
My personality is like an elastic. The elastic had lost some of its rubberization. I felt brittle. I felt angry. I felt not listened to and appreciated. I was tired and not well supported. And I thought I need for my own self-preservation. And frankly, the show needed to evolve beyond me too. So I wanted to leave the show when it was in a strong position, so that whoever followed, in this case Donna Friesen, would inherit something that was very personal to me. But I just knew it was time. There was every part of me said, you just need to just go away and stop them.
Yeah.
So I did.
And then you find yourself...
I burned out. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting process. I'm going through it again. It's like, anybody who's been through this, whether you've been fired or left a job, like you sleep for like ever.
Yeah.
Because you're so exhausted. It's like the fatigue gets into you at a cellular level.
Yeah.
So I slept for a while, and then, once you're over the fatigue and the stress of carrying something big, and carrying a national newscast is a very big job, and it's always live, and everybody's, you're a big target. So once that left, I started to heal, and then my creative juices started to fire. And I tried entrepreneurship for a little bit, and created an app for Shakespeare education.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It seems out of your lane.
Yeah,
but
it was,
not.
but I wanted to learn about the iPad, and then which was new at the time. And then I did an executive produced an adventure reality show and did a bunch of stuff just to see. And then CTV came calling, and I thought, I could use a paycheck again. This is cool. So,
that'd be nice.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah.
Wow. And now, of course, I mean, you're sort of one of the elder statesmen in news media in Canada now. That's not a comment on your...
on my gray beard.
Your gray beard.
Yeah.
No, but the credibility, I think, that you bring into a room now as a journalist and as a professional who has been in the field all his life, really, I think it can't go unnoticed. So,
well, I mean, what I'm doing now is I'm basically taking that thing and that brand, and I'm trying to step over to podcasting. And it's not, podcasting doesn't require the brand the same way broadcasting does, but the subject matter that I'm tackling, I think, requires a level of belief that I have personal integrity, that I have dealt with attempts to manipulate and spread misinformation in journalism. It's not so much this, I don't think that podcasting is creating its own celebrities. It doesn't need televisions.
Sure.
But what it does, I think, need is some journalistic grounding tested over the years, especially if you're going to take on these misinformation campaigns.
Yeah, and I mean, what better time than this is the age of, the old cliche of fake news, right? Do you think that people have a reduced ability to tell the difference between reality and news? Yeah.
I get fooled.
Yeah.
And I've been trained my whole life to be an editor for what's real and what's not, and I get fooled.
Right.
And they're getting much better at it. I mean, they're basing, it's not, a lot of that stuff initially was so ridiculous that it was easy to spot.
Right.
They're getting much better at making it seem real. So they'll intersperse some real reporting with a couple of other things that begin to slowly bend your perception of what the truth is. And that's in the written word. I mean, don't even get me started on soft fakes and all the rest of the ways that they're starting to manipulate what you see and hear as well.
What's a soft fake?
A soft fake is, a deep fake.
Right.
You've heard of those?
I have, yeah.
A soft fake is even more subtle.
Right.
Like a deep fake would be an attempt to do a whole sentence and adjust what a person is saying in video. A soft fake would be to change a few words in a sentence,
right,
to change the meaning of it. And that's what I mean about their ways of manipulating are so much more evolved just in 2 years.
Right.
That, for sure. I mean, there's this series on HBO that's running on Crave right now called Years and Years, and it takes a look, it's a BBC series, and it looks at what happens to our society from 2019 to 2038, where what you read, see, and hear, you have no faith or trust in.
Right.
What kind of society does that look like?
Right.
How do people know when bad things are happening, and how do they learn to trust anything?
So then how do you not become a cynic? How do you not become suspicious and paranoid about everything? Or is that the antidote?
Well, I think that's what they're trying to make us become.
Right.
They're trying to undermine, they're trying to make us question authority. And that's not just, political authority. That's, the authority of science, the authority of journalism, all those things. And so I don't know where that leads. All I know is that I'm trying to do my own little bit by creating a podcast that will hopefully illuminate how they're trying to do it and what the effect is and what it looks like.
Pulls back the curtain, yeah. Well, what are some of the or one of the biggest misinformation campaigns that you think we're dealing with right now?
I think the biggest threat is that the Russians prove that people are vulnerable to it.
Right.
And so now that it's proven to be an effective, now that they can weaponize truth, there's lots of people trying it. There are companies springing up that will provide data to help you manipulate in ways that didn't exist before. There are dudes in the basement that just like to fuck shit up that are trying to do it, right? And they're becoming more sophisticated, and there's just more of them.
Yeah.
So people who desire power themselves to challenge authority or just to make people angry. I mean, I think the thing I worry about most is how much information they have on everybody to know how to make you angry. Right. And I think that's not only politically true, I think that's in everything. So they may know in my case that I've got a gay son that I attend, that I've been quite open about that, written books about it. They may know that I'm of a certain age, that I'm a white male, that I live in Canada. And so they may start to feed me anti-gay rhetoric that I get angry about, that I will post on Facebook, and it may be real, it may not be real. But they're really good at seeding anger in a society.
To what end?
To bring it down.
Right.
To disrupt it.
And how unhealthy that's making us. I mean, there's something to be said that anger is a healthy emotion, of course. All emotions serve a purpose, but it's been, I think, one of my least favorite and most destructive emotions personally to feel that anger inside me.
Right? And people are now in the business, and there are corporations making money on how do we make people angry.
Right.
So that we manipulate them towards a certain political behavior, so that we manipulate them towards a certain economic behavior, so that we can, seed racism.
Right. Is it true that more people are more likely to vote if they're angry, more likely to buy something else or not buy something if they're angry,
yes,
right? Versus if they're motivated and feeling good.
Right. Yeah, anger is a much more powerful emotion than, being satisfied and pleased. And, and they're being, in some instances, there's an example of WhatsApp being used in Peru, that the anger was generated by a company towards a certain segment of that population. I think it was Hindi. It made them angry enough. They made a campaign around show your anger by not voting. So it was the flip there. It's like you can anger by not being part of the system. You can feed the anger. Don't vote. Don't be part of this, crap that's going on. And so they suppressed the Hindi vote, and someone from the other political party rose.
There could be something to be said there about the what happened to Hillary Clinton in many respects, depending on what part of that debate you fall into. People who didn't feel on the left that she was the best candidate, so don't vote. Well, look what you ended up with.
Right. And I think we now know that it is possible that they can feed. The fascinating thing about politics right now is that you and I can experience it in completely different ways. That the messaging is so micro-targeted to who you are and who I am that we can think the political leaders are two entirely different people.
Right. Now, one of the, I guess if you mention your books, I'd like to come back to your I think still most recent book in a minute, but something that I've been learning through working on my own book or doing public speaking or even a medium like this is that you can only do so much work for the audience. And in fact, it's desirable in some respects. Maybe it's probably different for journalism, but if you leave more openness for the mind of the listener to figure it out on their own, to come to their own conclusion, whatever, it's more of a creative enterprise. But what we're talking about here is that you're giving the information and they're manipulating it in such a way that it doesn't matter. I'm losing my thread here. Hold on, but
I just read Scientific America has something out this week. It looks at the human nature and says, being dishonest is much more contagious than being honest. If you look at human behavior, believing lies is easier than believing truth because of how we're built and what society. So if that's the truth, they are actually feeding what is our nature.
How do we maintain our integrity? How do we continue? I think this is where I was trying to get to, ham-handedly. How do we maintain that firm core of what we believe and what we don't, and not be manipulated by misinformation or even just different information?
Travel, experience new people, remain connected as human beings and not connected through machines. Look for, as I think I have in life, look for the authenticity of whoever you're talking to and seek them out and grow those conversations in your life. I think we have been fascinated because it's happened so quickly and it's so addictive of just how easily we can communicate in ways other than looking over a table and talking to each other.
Right.
So I think the anecdote to this is in some ways return to the life that I will be the last generation to remember, likely, and that is the unnetworked life and grow that part of you that is the most human.
Did that play an important role in connecting with your son and writing the book? I think it's your most recent book about
my
his
one and
experience.
only. It was too much
your
work.
one and only.
I'm never doing another book. It was so much work.
It was that traumatic for
Yeah,
you.
it was just so much work.
You've seen a lot of drama in your life,
Yeah.
but writing a book was the worst. Yeah.
Yeah, writing the book, frankly, came about from a concern, a statistic that how many more LGBTQ youth attempt suicide than straight youth. Mm-hmm. And I know my son, I watched how my son came through it. I didn't know until we wrote the book that he had been suicidal himself.
Really?
And
so you decided to write the book first, and then that came out later.
Yeah. And we wrote it separately from each other.
Okay.
Because we didn't want to pollute each other's stories and timeline.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to protect my son. He didn't want to police me. He just told his story. I just told mine. Yeah. And then we had an editor who oversaw it. And then one day, and it's on YouTube if you ever have an interest in watching it, we exchanged each other's manuscripts. And that's when I found out that he had in fact been suicidal at a time when I knew that I just was not reaching him. I didn't know why. I had suspicions that he might be gay, but it's not. You ask that question, you tread lightly, and the protocol is that it has to come from them, from your kid or your friend or whoever. Mm-hmm. That was sort of that's sort of how the book began, but in many ways it was not only the turning point in our relationship, but it was a turning point in my own self-awareness too, and it forced me to revisit a lot of pain points in my own life. Professionally and personally, forced me to reconcile how I had failed my own child, which is a huge thing to think about. And it forced me to relinquish sort of the alpha in my relationship with him and with my children and learn a degree of humility of like, okay, now I have to learn from you. And all of that really, really healthy. And sort of helped me reduce the amount of pain I felt in my life because I could go back and revisit these things with a perspective of time and being kinder to myself in older age than I had been in my 30s, let's say, and treat myself with more tender, loving care, I think.
So raising kids, how many kids?
2 kids, a daughter, Erica, as well.
Trying to raise those or participate in raising them while still, very aggressively pursuing a career that evolves every, 8 to 10 years, it seems. So what was that like trying to balance the two things?
I got tired of exposing my vulnerability. I mean, I'm sure you face this sometimes.
Yeah, exhaustion.
Yeah, you just stand on stage and you say, I am so tired of talking about myself.
Yep.
And I'm so tired of opening myself up to you and feeling embarrassed about who I am and some of the decisions I made and feeling, tired of feeling that I have to expose myself as being incomplete. And so I was, I did the book tour, but I remember being in Vancouver with Alex on the stage, and halfway through I just went, I'm done. I'm not doing any more of these. Just because I couldn't, I just felt I could not hold my id together enough at that point. Just because in order to be successful with the book and because I love my son, I would open myself out every time. And then I'd have to go out and work at a high level at the same time. And I guess I became concerned that one might start to jeopardize my ability to function on the other.
Right, yeah. No, fair enough. And it's funny you mentioned that because that was one of the first reasons of me wanting to do this podcast was that I got so sick of talking about myself and my own story. It's like, it's this audience's first time hearing it, and I'm sure it's very emotional for them. And it's still emotional for me too, but I've told it probably no less than 1,000 times.
Well, you re-traumatize yourself a little bit every time.
I think you do. And actually, after I did the TED Talk, I didn't see that coming. I didn't realize, that's a thing, that reliving all this stuff in your head and for months on end, and then needing to revisit it over and over is actually really hard.
It's really hard. And when I worked at W5 and would have to talk to people, I'd have to warn them at the front. I was like, I'm going to ask you questions that are going to leave you in a place that you don't. I know you want to tell your story, otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here. But I need you to pay attention to what happens after I'm gone, because you're going to feel better for a minute, and then you're going to have regret, and then you're going to think, why am I feeling all this? And it's because we're going to dredge up some stuff. So because I felt it myself, I guess I tried to have a feeling of custodianship over that.
I think that's an important and ethical thing to give people a heads up of, because now, especially when we're in an age of the most mental health awareness I think that we've ever had, lots more people do want to open up. but they don't always realize that it can be a mixed bag sometimes. You know, it's
For sure.
your truth doesn't always make other people very happy. You know, there's parts of your truth, especially if it's trauma related, that are going to upset other people.
Yes, right. And there is on Twitter, and especially if you're doing it in the public eye, there is a chorus of people that like get thrills out of watching you squirm. And so that takes a toll over time too, and you have to be prepared for like you feel better answering your truth, but someone out there can be threatened by it for whatever reason that they have.
I've been thinking about running this experiment on Twitter because that seems like the most appropriate place for it, where it seems like if you say something that somebody even mildly disagrees with, they'll just find out what you're passionate about and then attack that because they know that's the thing, that's your most important thing because it's in your Twitter bio after all, so that must be the thing that you value the most. Therefore, I'm going to tear you down on that point.
Right, and that's seeding the anger again.
Absolutely, and it seems like such a... I don't know if I believe in evil or not, but it's like the worst way. Like you're looking for somebody's weak spot and then attacking.
I mean, neither of us are psychologists, but we've talked to enough of them in our lives.
Sure.
That it's all about feeling more powerful.
Tearing other people down. Yeah. So I'm thinking the experiment is I might just put a bunch of random things that are important to me in my Twitter bio at some point and then piss people off and see if you're a terrible rocket scientist. That's like, no, all right. So that proves the point then that you're just trying to tear people down, right?
But that's a subtle thing that they won't get anyway.
No, they probably wouldn't, I suppose.
No, so don't bother.
Yeah, don't bother. So have you already started recording the new podcast?
Yeah, bits and pieces.
Yeah. So what are the kind of the issues that you're starting to pull out early on?
What's interesting to me is how intimate the conversations are.
You're having one guest or a panel?
Yeah, it's more like a show. It's got elements. It's very well financed. So we have like 4 investigative reporters.
Nice.
We've just hired the executive producer of The Current is the executive producer of the podcast.
Great.
So we've got some really senior people I've worked with at various places and others that I haven't. And I mean, for a guy coming from television, it just seems so wonderfully simple.
Right.
Like you can just sit down and follow your own curiosity.
Right.
You can speak in a tone that is not a broadcast, but a narrowcast. And, we're talking to people in between their earbuds.
Right. But you also have to really describe what you're trying to get to. You have to get to the point in a way I think that's different than television. You can't flash dramatic pictures.
Right. You can't have that save the day.
Right.
But that's new for me. So that's kind of cool.
Had you ever done much radio or
I never did radio.
I
only worked in television. Yeah. Because I liked making little movies. I liked the whole bit about bring the sound up here. Let's let that scene go on. Yeah. So it's I may miss that. Right. But right now, at this stage in my life, I'm enjoying the purity of conversation in a way that I haven't been able to.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to, or what's the ultimate outcome of the project that you're doing now? I mean, if it's another one of these cycles moving towards something, where's it going?
I don't know. This one will run during the campaign a little bit afterwards, and then we'll see whether or not it gets an audience. And then, maybe I think I will always be curious, and so probably just more podcasting.
Yeah.
I'm, as I sit in front of you today, I've done everything I ever wanted to do and more in television.
Yeah.
But I'm learning new things here, so I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to continue doing much else.
Right.
I've done a lot of charity stuff, as you do, and I've tried to have an impact in areas other than in journalism. I support veterans' causes. I've tried to be a leader in getting fathers to talk to their gay children. I'm sort of done with that. I would like to have good conversations with people, learn new things, but live a much quieter, softer life with my wife and learn to breathe.
What was the first day of retirement like? Tell me that, like after you didn't have to get into in front of a camera.
I woke up and I said, what have I done? And then, because it was my choice.
Yeah,
sure. And the second thought was, what have I done?
Right.
Like same phrase, 2 different ways. And so to me, it was like an endless horizon for like experiences that I have not had in life because I've been living it at warp speed. And I need to figure that out. And I hopefully, knock wood on the table, have the time to do that.
Were you as burnt out this time leaving as you were in leaving Global
Last
National?
time? Yeah. No, I had a good 9-10 years at CTV. I was well managed. They gave me lots of different projects. They respected me. I felt very good there. But like a Global, somebody once said, you always want to leave a little ahead of your time, never after. Because what happens if you leave ahead of your time is you have the opportunity and if you're in the business of getting people to be your audience, they're not sick of you yet.
Right.
I also worked in an industry that was contracting badly, had business models, had problems, and I did feel that I needed to step aside so that younger people could rise up, because the guys with gray in their beard at the top need to do that, just so that younger people see that there's a path to that level.
There was a faux controversy, I think, right? I don't know if you saw Rex Murphy's column in the Globe or in the National Post rather recently, and so commenting on how a panel of women were interviewing the Prime Minister and disparagingly making a comment on feminism. But what I took from that was, holy crap, the three major news anchors in Canada are all women, and I'm sure everybody already noticed this. But
Lisa's she's the chief correspondent. Susan Delacourt is the Ottawa bureau chief.
Right.
Rosemary anchors the National as their political person, and Donna is the executive editor of Global National.
Right.
These are all the most senior people in their news organizations who happen to be women.
Yeah,
it just pissed me off to no end. I was so angry for them, and angry that
the most credible journalists in the country, among the most credible journalists in the country,
who have those positions not because they're women, but because those are the, if a man held the position of executive editor, he would have been on it. But it happens to be women. But that is, if I think back in my life, that has been the most profound change in my profession.
Right.
When I entered, there were women reporters.
Sure.
There were very few women anchors, and certainly no women running news organizations, which there now are.
Is that what made the change when women came into positions of power in the networks? Is that what allowed women to come up?
You'd have to ask them.
We should get Lisa.
But I have asked.
I
have asked, and they will say no. Right. That more often than not, it was men that mentored them.
Really?
Through it all.
Really?
I'm sure there were strong women, but because there were fewer women, it was harder to find. They just had to find the right mentors, as we all do, in working through organizations who recognize the quality of their work. I know that all of them hate the fact that when they were announced, it was the first woman to ...
Right.
None of them enjoyed that, because that's not what it was about.
Yeah. Now, I feel like you have so much knowledge that you've gained over the years that you just couldn't have learned in journalism school.
I never went.
You never went to journalism school?
No, I never went to journalism school. I have no journalism education.
I was going to ask you what you would recommend to J-school students, but don't go to journalism school, maybe? No.
Yeah, you know what? It's changed. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I really do think that the best thing you can do, well, I think you need to go to university.
Yeah, sure.
Just to develop critical thinking and to meet, other critical thinkers. I think that's an important part of it. You need to figure out what juices you. But travel is the most important part of it. To understand how much misery there is in the world. To understand that there are good people everywhere who are trying to make better lives than they had for their children. Those sort of common human values that wherever you go in the world create a sunshine or a radiance around them, even and especially maybe in the most tragic of circumstances. Journalism school will teach you how to say it, but you need to know what you want to say. Yeah. And to me, that is experience with people, that is traveling, that is understanding culture, and just, knowing human behavior.
So if the places you've traveled, the stories you've covered, what are some of them that really stuck with you? As a journalist, and especially as an anchor, you have to be good at moving from one segment to the next and forgetting it in a way. But I'm sure there have been some that have really stayed with you.
Yeah, and unfortunately in television journalism, you move so fast through it, right? I remember a young man when Benazir Bhutto was assassinated in Islamabad, visiting him in hospital. And he was in his first election in India. She had been assassinated, and everybody who was with her in that truck had shrapnel, buried in their flesh, in their organs. And I imagined him going through Islamabad, really proud that as a young man he was there with a female, Prime Minister of India, and that it was election time, and he thought, like, wow, here I am. I'm this close to power, and my family must be so proud. And then I visited him in hospital, and he had so much injury he couldn't speak. He had gone in a nanosecond from being so proud to be close to somebody who represented change and female dynamic and involved in the great argument that politics is, to being silenced, by a murderous bomber. And looking at the pain, but mostly that his heart had been crushed, that all of that hope and all of that promise had led him to a hospital bed and hot pieces of metal being burned into his body, and it was, it was really, really just so sad.
How do you release that from you, from yourself, from your mind, or do you?
No, I don't think you should. I think it's important, as we undergo an election here, that we understand that some people pay a monstrous price for engaging in democratic conversations, and we take it for granted here. And so you try to internalize it, and you try to make sure that by how you conduct yourself in stable democracies like this, that you never forget that it is a massive struggle in many places of the world for the right to believe and to have hope that you have impact in your own society.
What have been some of the most inspiring stories, or the things that have left you feeling, yeah, this is how things are supposed to be?
The release of Nelson Mandela, a long time ago. For your listeners, he was incarcerated for over 20 years in South Africa because he believed that a black man had the same rights as a white man. And somehow emerged from that searing experience full of grace, and made sure that the anger that his community felt over their treatment over time as he became president of South Africa, there was no retribution. He created the idea of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to try to expunge the hatred in his own society. And it was through him that I saw what leadership can be. If it's got 20 years in prison to figure out what it wants to stand for, maybe, or just that there is a purity of grace and open-heartedness that is such a powerful motivator for people that want to believe that that's our true nature, that you can change societies by example in a way that Mandela did.
I'm inspired that you still have such a faith in humanity, as someone who has been at the forefront for so many years of seeing the worst of humanity. So I want to thank you for providing that example for everybody, that yes, it is possible that we can get through this, and that we can still maintain our integrity and still be hopeful, even in the darkness.
Yeah, I think so. You have to make choices about how you want to see things and who you associate with, and what you hold close to your heart and what you try to keep as far away from it as you can.
Hope is a choice, isn't it?
Yeah.
We choose hopefulness. Well, thank you, Kevin Newman, for coming in and chatting with me. Anything else you want to mention?
Download my podcast.
Go download Kevin Newman's podcast.
Attention Control with Kevin Newman.
Attention Control with Kevin Newman. Great. Well, thanks so much, Kevin. It's been a pleasure having you.
Yeah, I love chatting, man. Thank you.
That's it. That's my conversation with the indomitable Kevin Newman. I was searching in the thesaurus in my head for a word, and indomitable is the first one that came out. So there you go, Kevin, you're indomitable. I don't even know what that means. Kevin Newman is the former host and managing editor of W5. His podcast, Attention Control, is available everywhere now, and election season in Canada is the best. Federal election season, of course, is a great time to listen. So go check out Attention Control on Apple Podcasts and everywhere else. And you know what else you can do while you're over on Apple Podcast? You can subscribe to So-Called Normal. How's that for a segue? That's a Kevin Newman-worthy segue right there. So head over to Apple Podcast. If you're listening to this show right now on Apple Podcast, great. Click that little subscribe button and scroll down to the bottom and leave us a little star rating. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think. You can let me know what you think anytime on social media. Everybody else does, so you might as well too. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. Most places I'm at Mark Hennick, at MarkHennick. MarkHenick, or you can go over to markhennick.com if you want to learn more about me and all the fun that I have talking about mental health every single day of my life. Listen to the podcast every Monday. We've got new episodes coming out. We've got lots more coming out to come. So I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Kevin Newman today. I sure enjoyed talking to him. And we'll talk to you next week here on So-Called Normal.